As I've told you before, people are always asking me, what's it like living in Florida? You all have elf on a shelf. We have gator on a tater. Be good so you know what's in your stocking, but reach into it gently. Here we go. All right, we're looking at it was the 4th of July, or was it? What we're going to do today to wrap up our 2 weeks of having fun and learning American history is we're going to talk about things that are absolutely set in concrete. This is what happened in American history that didn't. And some constants in American history should not be messed with. Who's from Texas? Okay. Don't mess with Texas. That's absolutely right. They had a whole national non-littering campaign on Don't Mess with Texas. They got Willie involved and had all these great promotions and great. It really started out as a 55-gallon drums with Don't Mess with Texas on it, put on the side of the road so that people didn't litter. And then, of course, Texans being Texans, like, oh, don't mess with Texas, you know, and it kind of took off from there. But Texas has some things that, that hold true. Remember the Alamo. There's an old joke where an international flight's going down, they've lost an engine, it's getting closer to the water, and the pilot gets on and says, we've thrown luggage off, we've thrown everything off we can find. I need 3 brave men to sacrifice themselves for the safety of the others. They fling a door open, and an Englishman runs back to the back of the plane, says, God save the Queen, and he jumps off. Frenchman runs back to the plane, says, Vive la France, throws himself off. Texan runs to the back of the plane, says, remember the Alamo, and grabs 2 Mexicans and throws them off. Texans will be Texans. But the Alamo is one of the most iconic buildings in the United States. You see this building, you know exactly what it is. I could show you a silhouette, and you would still know that that's the Alamo. There's no doubt in anybody's mind. Why? Because of this guy here. This little thing they call the camelback or the camel hump, and that's what tells everybody that's the Alamo. What's my phrase I've been telling you all 2 weeks? When someone says, everybody knows that, you know you're in trouble. Well, everybody knows that, right? That's the Alamo. There's some things wrong with this picture. It's the Battle of the Alamo. Who could pick out some things that aren't right with this picture? The flag. What's wrong with it? There you go. There's number one. There was no Texas flag in 1836. What else is wrong with the flag?
There's no earthen berm all the way around it.
It's upside down. You know, the white's on the top. Where are my Texans when I need them? Come on through. What else is wrong with this picture? I mean, number one, if I had been a defender of the Alamo, I would think I would get inside the Alamo. These guys are all out front. And I'm not sure. That's right. That's right. That's where I'd put them. These guys look like they're all out front getting ready to take them on. You know what the biggest thing wrong with this picture is? Where's the camel hump? Battle of the Alamo was in 1836. That was not added until 1840. I mean, it'd be a lot easier to shoot over because this is kind of in the way when you get right down to it. But yeah, that wasn't added. One of the most iconic buildings in American history, and that's not what it looked like at the most crucial time that we remember it. But I know, and I didn't believe it. My youngest went to A school. She was in the Navy, went to A school out in San Antonio, took a tour of the Alamo and sent me a program. Says, I'm going to have to send you proof because I know you're not going to believe it. But it was not added until 1840. How about in 1492, finish? That's right. Did Columbus discover America? No. Everybody knows that, right? He did not discover America. How many of you were taught in school that Columbus discovered America? That's right. What's going on with that? I mean, these are the 4 voyages of Columbus. He didn't even come close. Closest he got was The Bahamas never got onto anywhere that is now even North America. I guess maybe he discovered Central America a little bit. And maybe it's one of those deals where somebody kept saying over the years, Columbus discovered the Americas, and we just kind of morphed that into America. I don't know. I can't explain this one for you. But the bottom line is we've all been taught that Columbus discovered America, and he didn't. And we know that. How about this? What's the Mason-Dixon line?
Line between Pennsylvania and Maryland.
Okay, got a Pennsylvania-Maryland discussion going on over here. Any north and south discussions? North and south. I mean, I kind of gave you a hint with the two flags, right? Well, that's wrong. Mason-Dixon line was surveyed between 1763 and 1767 by English surveyors and astronomers Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon as part of the resolution to Cresap's War. What was Cresap's War? Well, thank you for asking. It's a border conflict between Pennsylvania and Maryland in the 1730s, culminating in the deployment of military forces by Maryland in 1736 and Pennsylvania in 1737. The armed phase of the conflict ended in May 1738 with the intervention of King George II, who demanded the negotiation of ceasefire. And this is what it all came down to. The final settlement was not achieved until 1767, when the Mason-Dixon line was recognized as the permanent boundaries of these colonies. Notice I'm using words like colonies and not states. I'm using the 1700s, not the 1800s. This had absolutely nothing to do with North and South. It had absolutely nothing to do with dividing free states and slave states. It had nothing to do with states at all. It was settled in 1767. We weren't even declaring independence yet when this was done. Yet we take it still today to mean this is a big division of North and South. And some people ask, well, what about the song? Song says way down south in Dixie. That can't be wrong. Well, no, but the song was written in 1859, so they're kind of taking this historical situation in the past, writing a song about it in what was then the present, and saying, yeah, see, we've always been Dixie that way. But that's just something that we had created and we made. We took the myth and then we turned it into a legend and then it made it a fact. Something we've been talking about all along. John Singleton Copley, one of the greatest portrait painters in American history. Born in Boston, he was in town during the Stamp Tax Rebellion, the Boston Massacre, the Boston Tea Party. When we get into Boston, you're going to see Copley Square, Copley Bank, Copley Hall. He is one of Boston's favorite sons. Everybody in town to this day loves John Singleton Copley. He left for England in 1774, never to return. Why? Show it out there. Oh, he died. Well, that'd be okay. That'd be a reason to leave and never come back. He was a loyalist. One of Boston's favorite sons, Boston of all places. All of the great founding fathers wanted their portrait painted by Copley. That's how good he was. John Adams, Washington, Samuel Adams, Hancock, Paul Revere, a young John Quincy Adams. You can tell he had hair. Everybody. Matter of fact, he was so good that John Adams and John Quincy Adams went to London to get their pictures painted by him after he had completely vacated. The other thing that kind of really comes to your realization when you're looking at these, I never realized how much Paul Revere looks like Jack Black. We know who could play him in a movie now, don't we? Who went to Plymouth? See The Rock? Yeah. I told you it's going to be amazing. It was amazing how small it was. Well, first time I went to Plymouth and saw The Rock, I'm approaching the cave, the place it was there, and as I'm getting closer, I'm thinking, gonna see it any minute now. Where is that thing? Oh, it's that little bitty guy down there. Yeah. We have what we think it's going to look like, our anticipation, and we have reality. You're expecting this enormous rock, and then we get this thing. And it's really disappointing. And you think it's got to be good. It's got this, whatever you call that. It's it's like, I want to say a mausoleum, you know, but okay, that'd be kind of taken in the wrong direction. But it's this shrine set up to Plymouth rockiness. And you think this is going to be a great thing. It's got to be the right one. It's got 1620 stamped right in it, you know, so that can't be wrong. Here we are down here in the well. First time I ever saw the rock, my wife and I went up and we were looking in it, and a Massachusetts State park ranger started giving a talk, and I really respected and appreciated what he did. He said, you know what, we know that St. Augustine is older than we are. We know that Jamestown is older than we are. He said, this is where we started. This is our beginning. And I respected that because that's the right way to approach it. And he was explaining that this isn't the original Plymouth Rock. The original Plymouth Rock, they picked it up to move it because in the early parts of the 20th century, they actually set out little rock hammers so you could chisel off pieces and take them home for souvenirs. That's not sustainable. So they said, well, you know what, we better move it. So they picked it up to move it, and it broke. So then they picked up the biggest half, and it broke again. And now you got pieces of Plymouth Rock. There's one in one of the museums up there. They took some of the others and put them in storage there in City Hall and whatnot, and replaced it with this guy. And so this really little lady was standing in front of me as we're listening to this and looking down into the pit, and she wheels around and goes, what'd he say? And I said, well, he was explaining that this isn't the real Plymouth Rock. Oh, I know, fake news, and walked off. All right. We perpetuate it onto our children. This is, see, again, they said, no, not the rock with the bunnies on it. Go to the one with 1620. That's the one you want to step on. But this is what we tell our kids happened as they dress up in the little hats and the paper feathers and things like that. And, you know, I read Nathaniel Philbrick's book called Mayflower. Really, really good explanation of what went on during this time. And one of the things he points out is when you row ashore there in Plymouth, there is a definite beach. Some rocks scattered around, you know, but it's a Massachusetts beach. About 50 yards over to the left, you can find some rocks. Because, you know, that's what sailors do, is they're rowing up to a nice smooth beach and they say, ooh, wait, let's head for the rocks. You know, that's where we want to go. It's not what they did, it's not what happened. But it was just something that set and established this. This is our foundation for coming over here. And that's where the myth and the legend turned into fact about Plymouth Rock. Now, when we think of landing here and what went on, we have this whole kumbaya image in our minds of everybody, you know, having a nice time and sharing food. I'm a little concerned about this guy who brings a loaded arquebus to the game, but you know, that's okay. But this isn't what it looked like. The Pilgrims took off. They took off late because they had to turn around and go back to Plymouth and start over again at one point. They get to P-Town. We know that's the first place they landed, was up at Provincetown, up on the tip of the Cape. They were up there for about 30 days. They got attacked several times by Indians. It's just a sand spit. You couldn't hold life there. They said, give us time, don't leave. Let us look around for a place. By the time they landed in Plymouth, it was December 21st, 1620. So we all know they landed in 1620. Barely. It was 1620 by 10 days. Have you ever been to Massachusetts in December? Coldest I've ever been in my life, it was in Boston in October. I can't imagine going out to Plymouth in December and not being prepared for what they were going to hit. Whole lot of difference in the weather you get way up there in Massachusetts on Cape Cod and what you get down in other places of North America where they were actually heading. I found this, and I'm going to blow this up a little bit just to emphasize it. And it's really tragic when you get right down to it. These were the 102 people who crammed themselves into the Mayflower. And those of you who saw Mayflower 2, you have a much better idea of how small it was. Plus 25 crew members? So, and then provisions for 2 months in the North Atlantic during November and December. This is borders on insanity. That's how badly they wanted to get away. And you can see the size of the families. You can see the people who left together. These guys are holding hands and she's by herself. I'm not even going to comment on that one. But it was P-Town, so you gotta give them that. These are the people who got on the Mayflower. 1 year later, in 1621, these were the survivors. You see, you have a little boy by himself, a little girl by herself. Families are broken up. People have died. Another girl by herself. This whole family died. It's one of the most tragic things. It's easy, in joking to throw rocks at the Pilgrims and things like that. But the bottom line is the tenacity and the determination that these people had to stick it out and make it and survive is unbelievable. But this is a tragic situation, and that's part of what we forget about. Now, let's see. When the Pilgrims left England, what was their intended destination? But we went to P-Town. Huh. Okay. Yes, Virginia. Don't forget, the entire area, all up into what we call now New England, was known as Virginia. The Virginia Company owned all of that. Their very specific destination was actually the Hudson River. They were trying to get underneath Long Island to get into the Hudson River. That's where they had a contract to go. So yeah, the destination was Virginia. Where'd they land first? There you go, Provincetown. Boy, if you guys didn't know that one, I was going to throw something at you. P-Town, they're up at the end of Cape Cod. That's the first place they landed. In what year, then, was the first Thanksgiving? Ah, not 1620. Well, they were there, barely. How many say 1620? Good. How many say 1621? There you go. Now, when we think of celebrating Christmas, Thanksgiving, what are we thinking of? We're thinking of Europeans coming over to North America and bringing bounty off of their ship and having a time of praise and thanksgiving for making it alive. We also have Native Americans joining them and through sign language asking, can we participate? We've got food. And they bring food and there's this combined Thanksgiving time. That's what we celebrate as Thanksgiving, right? This is the part where everybody goes, yeah, that's right. Okay, so when was the first Thanksgiving? In what year? 1565 in St. Augustine, Florida. I'm going to throw a lot of St. Augustine at you. Priests went with the Spanish everywhere they went for this purpose. When they landed, the Spanish always brought provisions off the ship, and they had a time of thanksgiving to thank God for giving them a safe journey. And the priests always blessed it. On September 8th, 1565, Pedro Menendez founded St. Augustine. They brought the provisions off the ship, and a group of Timucua Indians saw what was going on, brought food with them through sign language, asked if they could join in this celebration of a safe survival. So it looked a lot more like this than it did with the pictures we see up in Massachusetts. Now the priest documented all of this. That was the beauty of the situation. And about, let's see, in 1966, those documentations were found. Dr. Michael Gannon at the University of Florida published an article talking about how they had found documentation of the first Thanksgiving being in St. Augustine. One night he got a phone call from a radio station in Boston and said, "Do you have any idea what's going on in Plymouth right now?" And he said, "No." He goes, there's an emergency town meeting of the city fathers. They're calling you the Grinch that stole Thanksgiving. And so this is, but this is one that, we're not going to try and take anything away from everybody. But if you look at why we do the celebration of Thanksgiving, it was actually first done by the Spanish. Who's this guy? There you go. You did much better when I put the name up there than you did the first time. Okay, good job. We know what he was famous for, being one of the most ill-prepared, not great spies in the American Revolution. What were his famous words? I'm sure. It was in there somewhere, I'm pretty sure. Yes. I only regret that I have but one life to give for my country. There's a problem. He never said it. And we know he never said it. The painting actually explains why. Well, other than the fact that you got a lady holding a baby up here to see somebody strangle. And this lady over here saying, "Oh, I can't look. Here, child, come back and see what's going on." She's grabbing him by the arm. What is it about this painting? Remember what we said the difference was between honorable spies and dishonorable spies? Honorable spies were in uniform when they were caught. Now, in all fairness to Hale, he didn't have a uniform, but the British didn't care. He was caught in civilian clothes and therefore considered a dishonorable spy. For hundreds of years before, all the way up to World War II, the British had a very strict protocol. When dishonorable spies were executed, they were not allowed last words. We always say, any last words before someone is executed. They did not give that to people who were caught as dishonorable spies. He wouldn't have been allowed to talk. We got that phrase from someone who knew him in college, 43 years after the fact. This person steps up, "Oh, you're writing about the American Revolution." "Yes, I knew Nathan Hale. And before he died, he said, "I only regret that I have one life to give for my country." Pretty sure. Well, he would have, if he could have. But maybe. It was honestly something that we've tracked down and found out that he never said those words. He would not have been able to say those words. I told my brother this. My brother went to his high school in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he was like, "That's not right," because it was engraved right above the school entrance when you walk in. I had to have said that. And I'm like, "I know, it doesn't seem, it didn't happen that way." But that's okay, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change the sacrifice that he made. It doesn't change the sacrifice that any of these people made for the founding of our country. It just changes it a little bit, as far as, But no, he never said those words. Uh-oh. Don't mess with Betsy Ross. Don't be messing with, I can see the looks on your faces. You're going, there's going to be a problem if you mess with Betsy Ross. Well, I'm not going to. In May of 1776, George Washington approaches a Philadelphia seamstress and flag maker named Betsy Ross and commissioned her to make a flag of his design that looked exactly like this. That's all true. But was that the first flag? What's wrong with this flag? Yeah, you got a Union Jack up in the corner where the circle of stars is supposed to be. What's up with that? This is what was known as the Grand Union flag, that in December of 1775, 6 months earlier, George Washington approaches a Philadelphia seamstress and flag maker and gives her instructions to make a flag that looks exactly like this. So what's up? Why would we have this up here? Ha Sometimes, well, we hadn't declared independence yet. Lexington, Concord, Bunker, or Breeds Hill were not fought in the pursuit of independence. What were we complaining about? What was our big mantra? There you go. No taxation without representation. We wouldn't have minded taxation. What we wanted was representation. We wanted to be equal. We wanted to be British. We wanted them to stop treating us as stepchildren. We want representation. And then these battles broke out because we were willing to fight for that representation. Washington had that flag made to show this is our goal. This will be our flag. It wasn't until January of 1776 that Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense. And he's using the phrase common sense like telling us, wake up, people. Show that you have a little common sense. I'm Irish. You shot at British soldiers. I know what happens to you when you do that. It's not going to be pretty and it's not going to stop. They are never going to quit until they enslave you. He said, independence, 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 independence. That's what you have to shoot for now because you have crossed the line. There is no such thing as going back with these people. So that's what we have to remember sometimes. We fought on the battlefields, but not for independence. We fought for equality, and we didn't get it. And that's when Paine started telling us, you got to rethink this thing. We learned this 2 weeks, not every British colony within the borders of the continental United States chose to rebel. You know now that East and West Florida were British colonies, chose not to rebel, meaning that there were 15 British colonies, not 13, when the American Revolution broke out. And they stayed loyal. We also learned that there were 33 British colonies in the Americas. Remember where I told you the geographic centers of the British America was? 2 miles north of the St. Johns River in present-day Florida, present-day Jacksonville. So it wasn't something that was fought always way up above us. The most important part to the British were the sugar colonies down below us. That's where the money came from. That's where the primary focus was from a British perspective. And the Declaration of Independence was not signed on the 4th of July. So hear me out before you light the torches and storm the castle. So what's going on with that? Well, let's look at it through a timeline. On June 7th, 1776, Richard Henry Lee proposed a vote on independence. We think, why did it take so long? Why not just do it? We had battles, we've been to war, still didn't declare independence. Thomas Paine's going, you guys are out of your minds, have some common sense. Still didn't do it. 6 months later, or 5 months later, we got Richard Henry Lee saying, I think we're going to propose a measure on independence. Finally, somebody said something. June 28th, the Committee of Five presented the first draft of the Declaration of Independence to Congress. I always love this part. The Committee of Five, Franklin, Adams, Jay, Livingston, and Jefferson. The other four, who's the character I'm looking for? Tom Sawyer. The other four, Tom Sawyer, Thomas Jefferson. Remember, Tom Sawyer made it look so fun, whitewashing the fence. He got every kid in the neighborhood to do it for him. It's kind of like these four guys are like, wow, yeah, none of us are smart enough to write out a Declaration of Independence. Maybe Jefferson ought to do it. He's the only one smart enough. And he spent 3 days writing away, and the other three played poker or something. I don't know what they did, but they didn't contribute to it at all until he was done. Then they edited. And oh my goodness, you could see the steam coming out of Jefferson's ears. He had never been edited before. This was very disturbing. And then it goes to Congress. Guess what Congress does? They edit it. He stood in a corner with his arms crossed and just scowled the whole time. So on July 2nd, representatives of the 13 colonies attending the Second Continental Congress in Philadelphia voted by a margin of 12-0, with New York abstaining, to favor a motion for independence. On July 4th, Congress officially adopted a final draft to the Declaration of Independence. It was printed on July 5th. Okay, the problem was there weren't people there to sign it at the time. Weren't enough. But that wasn't what this was all about. This wasn't about signing the Declaration of Independence. It was about adopting the final draft, saying this is it, this is a legal binding document, and we are declaring it. On July 5th, it was printed and it looked like this. What's missing? Signatures. They took the final draft, they took it over to the printer, and this is what was read from Independence Hall. July 9th, authorization for an affirmative vote finally arrives from the New York Assembly, bringing the number of colonies in rebellion to 13. It then took another 2 weeks until July 23rd for a transcriptionist to clearly and flawlessly reproduce the Declaration of Independence into the document that we see today. And you can imagine, those guys are writing with feather pens and inkwells. You make a drip, you make a mistake, you throw it away, you start over again. It took time to come up with this final finished copy. On August 2nd, the vast majority of those present signed the Declaration of Independence. The last signer of the Declaration of Independence was Thomas McKean of Delaware, and he signed the document on January 18, 1777. So, what am I saying? Well, John Adams wrote Abigail and said the second day of July 1777 will be the most memorable epoch in the history of America. I am apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. And I always put a footnote up here in case people think I just made that up. Adams thought it was going to be the second. But the bottom line, July 4th, Congress officially adopted the final draft of the Declaration of Independence. That makes it a legal binding document. We celebrate the right day. There's nothing wrong with that. It's when we say, yeah, it's the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Well, that's a lot simpler than what I just went through, right? It's just let's just cut to the chase. That's really, that's it. But in truth, it's understanding. You didn't need the names. You didn't need the signatures. Those were just men putting their lives on the line saying, I stand behind this. But as a body, as a Congress, just what happened on July 4th, that's what made this a binding document. That's what made us a nation. That's why we celebrate this day, and we got it right from the very beginning. We just don't always know how we got there. It sounds like most of my life. I might get something right, have no idea how I got there. But there we go. All right, let's have some fun. Where was the nation's first capital? I told you there's going to be a quiz. Where? Philadelphia. New York City. No one said Omaha? No? Okay. Peyton Manning, that's what I'm thinking of. Omaha. Yes, the first capital of the United States. I'll give you a hint, it's in the room where it happened. That was in New York City. I'm from Florida. When did Florida begin promoting itself as the Sunshine State? Well, that was before or after World War II? After. Anybody say before? This has nothing to do with anything we have seen on this trip. That's why, being a Floridian, oh shoot, I don't have any flamingos on. Oh well. After World War II, this is the power of marketing. In 1951, the legislature in Florida said, we are going to start taking state tax dollars and we are going to fund a department of transportation and tourism. And the bottom line is after World War II, my father was one of these recipients. And I don't know, I can't attest to what happened with the soldiers in the Pacific theater, but in the European theater, if you were MIA or a POW, then when you got home, the government sent these men and their spouses to Miami Beach for all expenses paid 2 weeks vacation. Don't you wish we treated our vets that way today?
Yes.
So my folks got to go down there, all expenses paid, and you know, the state of Florida said, huh, that worked. What else can we come up with? And well, why don't we get some tourism focus? You know, it's not just the rich and famous anymore who are wanting to come down here. By 1951, a lot of these men had gone home and said, hey, let's drive down to Florida. That was pretty cool. The roads aren't so bad anymore. The cars are better. Let's just take off on a little family vacation. I got a good job at the plant. Now we're starting to gather some steam. So 1951, hey, let's start promoting this. The biggest problem was promoting what? We have the worst weather in the world. We got tornadoes, we got hurricanes, we got dinosaurs crawling around the golf courses. Who wants to come here? I mean, Central Florida is the lightning strike capital of the world. But if we tell them that we're the Sunshine State, if you tell them, they will come. You know, it's just like the movie says. And we started promoting our state motto, we are the Sunshine State. And everybody's like, oh, well, okay, that makes a difference. Started heading to Florida. In the state, not the state capital, but in the nation's capital, in the Capitol building, every state is allowed 2 statues to represent somebody from their history that is significant to that state. And you can rotate them in and out. Florida has 2 statues. One of them never rotates. Okay, it's permanent. But we rotate others in and out. Who do you think the one is that never rotates out?
Ponce de Leon.
Ponce de Leon, who? Mickey Mouse, there you go. A man by the name of Carrier, the inventor of air conditioning. He's the one who owns the permanent statue that never rotates out, because without air conditioning, Florida today is not Florida today. Who's from North Carolina? Where did the Charlotte Hornets get their name for their NBA team? Okay, if you're not from North Carolina, where did the Charlotte Hornets get their NBA team?
You have a lot of bees?
A lot of bees, there you go. During the American Revolution, the area around Charlotte was so chaotic and so deadly that it garnered the nickname the Hornet's Nest. So this is actually a very historical name that they associated with their team. We see this in a lot of professional teams. Those of you remember the Baltimore Colts, it's because Baltimore was famous for horse breeding and colts and that kind of thing. Indianapolis Colts, really? No. I mean, there's nothing worse than the Utah Jazz. Used to be New Orleans Jazz. That makes sense. Utah Jazz? Are you kidding me? Now, Jacksonville Jaguars. How does that make sense? The very first black jaguar to come into a zoo into the United States was in Jacksonville, Florida. Today, every zoo in the United States has a black jaguar, because this very tired, exhausted old boy in Jacksonville sent his supply wherever they would have it. And so Jacksonville, it's really actually a very historic thing for us to be known with the jaguar. What event in American history defines our nation geographically? Louisiana Purchase.
The wagon train.
Okay, the Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
Okay.
Main trail. The railroad.
Railroads, Chisholm Trail. Civil War. We still talk about North and South based on the Civil War. We still talk about states that, is Texas a southern state? Well, of course it was. It was in the Civil War. What about Maryland? Southern state or northern state? Got southern. They were a slaveholding state, but they did not secede. Delaware, slaveholding state, did not secede. So we don't consider them to be southern states. What about Virginia? Anybody from Virginia? Oh, thank God. I hate it when Virginians are present when I have to tell them this next part. Is Virginia a southern state? Well, of course it is. It only makes sense, right? Seceded, majorly involved in the Civil War. Of course it's a southern state. However, I've got a map here that I like to play with. And we're going to look at this thing a little closer. And it says, this map was drawn in 1776. A general map of the southern British colonies in America, comprehending North and South Carolina, Georgia, East and West Florida. Who's missing? Virginia's missing, aren't they? Well, that's peculiar. Let's see what this one says. This is another map. Same guy, same year, same printing. And he's got the middle Atlantic states. Who's in here? Well, that looks like Virginia to me. This map was drawn in 1823. Middle Atlantic states. Well, there's Virginia. We got, this map was drawn in 1910. Middle Atlantic states, there's Virginia. This map was drawn or created in 2023. Virginia is still considered to be part of the Mid-Atlantic states, not the southern states. That's why I'm so thankful there aren't any Virginians in here to throw things at me, because they hate this part. But, you know, it's funny. We think of Virginia as being a southern state because it was involved heavily in the Civil War, yeah.
But you just said that you were defining it geographically by whether they seceded or not and joined the Confederacy.
No, I'm saying...
Not by the map that's geographically middle states, northern states, southern states.
You reverse that. What I'm saying is this is what we say, what we claim is Virginia's a southern state. But according to all the map companies, Virginia was a mid-Atlantic state. So if you're going by this, officially, it's not a southern state. My wife is funny, she's from Boston. She moved down to St. Augustine, and so I said, you got to see our sister cities. So we're driving up to see Savannah and then to see Charleston. Now, if I were to ask you, name a state that would be considered deep south, what would you say? Alabama, Louisiana, Georgia, Mississippi. My wife, as we're driving past Jacksonville, she starts chuckling, and I said, what's so funny? She said, only in Florida do we drive north to reach the deep south. And she's right. We don't think of Florida. Florida was the third state to secede, and we don't think of Florida. It doesn't come to mind instantly as a southern state, probably because half of the southern part of Florida is from New York, but it's just, again, how we perceive some of these things to be. Why is it Maine, one of the original 13, why is it in the 14th colony? All right, you guys listened as we were traveling all around Maine, didn't you? We were part of, I say we, they were part of Massachusetts. We talked about that as we saw New Hampshire here. We have Portsmouth right there. And, you know, what idiot is going to say, yeah, this is Massachusetts and this is Massachusetts, and divide it right there and expect nothing to happen? Of course it's going to happen. You got these guys kicked out in the backyard. Nobody's paying attention to them. And the people in Boston could care less about them. They finally said enough is enough, and they became their own state. But in the early years of being the United States, Maine was part of Massachusetts. Because why does Portsmouth, why does New Hampshire need this? Remember? They need access to the sea, that's right. You got to have access to the sea in the colonial era or you couldn't survive. That's why, look at this map. Florida went all the way to the Mississippi River and then down to the Gulf. So what happens when Alabama and Mississippi want to become states? They can't reach. So when that time comes along, they chop off the end of Florida and create these two little boot heels. Now Mississippi and Alabama have access to the sea. Louisiana has more access to the sea, and everybody's happy. That's why we created the boot heels. Uh-oh. Why does Missouri have a boot heel? They've got all kinds of access to the sea. This is the river. This is the Mississippi River. There's no problem with this. It's because in 1810 and 1811 there was a series of earthquakes in this area down here in Missouri that were so horrendous that the Mississippi River for 3 days flowed the wrong direction. That's how serious those earthquakes were. Well, everybody started leaving this area of Missouri. One gentleman bought up the whole thing. Then, when Missouri filed for statehood, they cut it off right here. Said, yeah, we're just going to draw a straight line over and go with Kentucky. Well, this guy didn't want to be a part of Arkansas. He said, there's nothing but hillbillies and bears down there. You know, he didn't want to be any part of it. So he petitioned. He wanted to be associated with St. Louis. He petitioned, and when you have a lot of land and a lot of money, it works out in your favor sometimes. So that's why Missouri to this day has this boot heel down here. Sometimes politics get involved. And lastly, let's close with this. Which was the last state to join the Union? Hawaii. Everybody knows that. You sure?
1959.
Come on. Who else joined in 1959? Alaska. You sure Hawaii was last?
Well, that's the order
You know how you know for sure? The TV show, Hawaii Five-0. Oh, yeah. Let that sink in. Guys, from my family to yours, I want to tell you how much fun I've had with you all for these last 2 weeks. And I just want to say thank you for letting me be part of your vacation and from me and American Cruise Lines. Thank you all so much.